Hi, welcome to today's session on navigating Microsoft Cloud workflows, productivity and collaboration, part 2. My name's Jared.
And I'm Adam.
And we're both teachers and digital learning advisors with the Department of Education.
Perfect. And I guess just a reminder today, this session is being recorded. And if you're watching this as a webinar, it's a live recording. So we do have a person in the chat to answer any of your questions. If we're going through and you missed something or you want to clarify something or ask for a link for content, there will be someone here manning the chat to answer those questions for you.
And if you're watching this as a recording, feel free to press pause and follow along as best you can.
Perfect. Let's dive in.
All right, so today, as we said, we are looking at navigating Microsoft workflows.
I guess before we get too far, let's do our acknowledgement of country. So I'd just like to recognise the ongoing custodians of the land and the waterways where we work and live. We pay our respects to elders past and present as ongoing teachers of knowledge of songlines and stories. We strive to ensure every Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander learner in New South Wales achieves their potential through education. And this picture on the left here is a nice, lovely picture of Lake Parramatta from where I am normally living and working on Darug land, and we acknowledge that land as well.
Excellent. So in our series that we're going through at the moment, we've got these 5 different stages of learning in the Files Anywhere, Anytime cloud migration work. So in our previous video, we had a little look at what it would take to move from being very green to this environment, to move from emerging and into the developing phase. And we talked about syncing your files in the File Explorer. We talked about how to create files, share files, and attach files to an email. We also talked about consolidating your personal files from a number of different sources and how to upload a photo directly into your team space from a mobile device.
Yeah, so let's, I guess this session we're going to dive a little bit deeper. We're going to probably go a little bit further into what it could be in a classroom environment, looking at students' perspective of working in the cloud, and also just starting to dabble in some of those privacy aspects, school organisation, file structure, all those sorts of aspects is where we're going to be looking today.
Excellent. All right, well, we'll jump back into our Microsoft environment.
Perfect. So I guess kicking off with students, Jared, we showed in our previous video how a teacher can access their online content, looking at OneDrive, looking at syncing clients and those sorts of things. Probably a slightly different workflow for students. The OneDrive syncing client, which is what we use for teachers to access their content via the File Explorer, a really great product. But often we know in schools, we're not in a one-to-one environment. Not every student has a laptop and it needs to be a shared device. And I guess we don't recommend using that syncing client. So a great workflow for students is actually jumping into the browser experience of OneDrive.
Absolutely. So when a student lands here in their student portal, they'll need to scroll down and there'll be a list of links on the right. And we are looking for the Microsoft 365. The Microsoft 365. That's one sec. I just might have a little sharing issue here. I'm going to stop sharing our screen and reshare our screen. I think our presentation sort of hung around.
Just click on that screen. I think the one on the top left. Yeah.
All right, let's share this one. Perfect. There we go. Cool. All right, let's try that again. So now that we've landed here in our student portal, we are going to jump across here on the right under department links, and we are looking for the Microsoft 365 option. And when we click that, it's going to land us in that very similar environment to what we see as a teacher with our Microsoft landing space.
Absolutely. I guess, again, as we called out in the last video, this space can be a little bit, I guess, confusing in terms of what it's showing you. It's got recommended, quick access, those sorts of things. I guess it's Microsoft's way of trying to be really efficient in showing you the latest things that you work on. It can really work for students because it'll obviously pop up with the documents they've worked with most recently. So it could be useful if you get a little bit lost in this space and you are just looking for your OneDrive files, using the little 9 dots up the top left-hand corner. You can click on that. It does give you access to all of the online content through Microsoft, all the Microsoft tools that are online. So Word, PowerPoint, all those sorts of tools that we use. But the OneDrive is the first one in that top corner we can click on, and that gives students access to all of their OneDrive content, anything that might be in there that they have saved previously, or a great place to save new work.
Absolutely. And just like the teacher version, it's going to default into the home, showing your recent files, but we want probably students to jump into the My Files space where they'll see their folders. And when they go to create new content, as we showed in the previous video, it's a really good workflow for students to go to the location they want their file to live and create their file in there. So if you were in, let's say, 2022 year 8, I can jump into this folder, and this is where I would create my new, let's say, PowerPoint for the sake of today. And that file will appear here in the, it'll automatically default in this view to open in the web, which is probably a good workflow. And we should then in theory see, which hasn't quite appeared yet, there it goes. Yeah. There is the creation of that file in its correct space.
Perfect. So again, that's using the web browser to create a brand new document. Now we know that that is probably the case for some points in time, but I guess our students have probably got a whole lot of existing content. So that might be stored, could be on a USB that they carry around. I know a lot of schools discourage USBs from coming in because they don't know what kind of content might be on them. And also it allows transfer of, it could be malicious software and those sorts of things. So I know USBs aren't really loved by schools in terms of students plugging them into lots of devices. So I guess the cloud is a nice safe place for students to be able to transfer their content. But if they do have things stored locally on the computer or even from their computer at home, how do we upload or add content to this space train of existing work?
Absolutely. So we probably encourage the drag and drop method is probably the fastest and most efficient way on a shared device. Now, quite often, like we mentioned in the previous video, that standard workflow, we go and open a brand new Word doc from our search bar, and then we save that. So in this situation, I'm going to grab a Word doc. It's going to open up a new copy. I'm going to grab a blank document. And this might have been their English assignment that they might have been working on, and they've finished their work and they go to save it. Because we're not using the sync client, students, we encourage them to save temporarily to the desktop and then drag those files into their online cloud storage. So I'm going to go here to save as. In this instance, it will prompt you for their OneDrive. So you can use this from a student point of view, 100% not a problem. And then you can choose the appropriate folder in here. That would be another method to do that. However, it may or may not, if these don't appear. I quite like the idea of going browse, choosing, say, the desktop, and it's just taken the name of that first thing that I typed in. It's my English assignment. I may choose to edit that in whatever way, but I'm going to drop that on my desktop right now. And that has now saved locally. Notice that what I save is not turned on at this point. It is just saving that locally. And I'm going to take that file. I'm going to minimize this. I'm going to drop my window down a little bit. Let me just close this in our background. And I'm going to minimize all our other windows just so we can get, if I do the Windows right arrow, bring that to one side, and then I can grab a file explorer on the left. And I'm going to go to that desktop space that we previously mentioned. So on the right, I've got my browser open with the destination where I'd like my file to live. And on the left, there is that English assignment that I've just saved to the desktop. And the process is really simple. We just grab that file, drag it across, and drop it into that cloud interface. And we'll notice up here that the file has now been uploaded, and we can see it appear here quite quickly. It is a very small file, appear here in their cloud space, ready to use.
Excellent. And I guess they can then launch that. Obviously, when you're using the browser, using that browser interface, it will always launch it straight into a browser window. So whether it's Word, PowerPoint, or Excel, it'll open it in a browser tab, which is okay. And I think for most work that students want to do, the tools in there are pretty sufficient, I think, to cater for students' needs. If they do need a particular aspect of a tool that is not available in the web browser, they can always choose to then launch that using the desktop app. Once they've got it open as well. The other thing to notice, I guess, Jared, is next to that new button that we used before within the browser, there's also an upload option. So Jared showed one way of clicking and dragging and dropping some content in there. The other option is to click upload. They can upload a file or even a whole folder of files. And again, it takes you the same interface, same location, desktop or downloads or wherever they've got their content, and then simply clicking and uploading. So just two ways, I guess, of doing the same thing, whichever students and your students are more familiar with. I guess it just gives us a bit of flexibility there.
Yeah, and don't forget that, excuse me, don't forget that local file that we saved on the desktop. Once we've uploaded to the cloud, it's just good hygiene to go in and hit delete on our keyboard on that from that desktop folder. And because we've got it open, it won't let us delete it per se. So I need to go back into my Word doc and close it. Little safety measure, but now that I've uploaded to the cloud, I can delete that off my desktop. and that's now gone, but it exists here in the cloud. Next time I come back to my computer and I want to keep working on that file, exactly what Adam said, the moment I open this, it is going to open in the browser. And there is that file ready for me to keep going and moving forward with. So a nice, easy workflow that we should encourage our students when working in a cloud environment.
Perfect. And I guess that's, one way of them starting some work is students launching a document themselves. Could be a PowerPoint, could be a Word document. I know, Jared, from being in the classroom, we often want to kind of increase that workflow from a teacher perspective. I want to make sure I've got visibility over some of the work they're doing. I want them to be able to send it to me. And I guess we could look at some sharing options and other things, but we're going to go through a workflow, I guess, utilizing Microsoft Teams as from a teacher's perspective, setting up a Microsoft team, what that can look like, and then the ability of maybe a simple assignment, setting out a simple assignment. I guess we call it an assignment, but sometimes it's just some resources, or it's just a file that we want to send to students. And we can think of those assignments as folders holding content, and I guess we'll run through it in a second, and how we can actually distribute a task to students or a document to students, and then they can return it to us all through that Microsoft Teams interface. So depending on how you want to structure it, there's going to be an option for that as well. Yeah,
and I guess probably what some, not all, there'll be a number of teachers out there that probably haven't dabbled in this space since COVID, when that's how you sent work out to students. But it's less of a task that you set for homework. This is what I'd be using every day in the classroom, to send a file out, have it come back to me where I could mark it and store it and access it at any time. So the first thing you need for your students is you need to create a class for them if you don't already have one. So just quickly, from my Teams interface, you see this join or create button here in the top right. If you're in the list view, it's on the bottom of the list panel, right at the bottom, where you can create a team. And in this case, you want to create a class team. It's a little bit different to the permissions of a staff team, obviously, but you won't get the assignments feature in any of these other team types other than class. So we envisage that every year that you would create a new class for your current class, or maybe for a cohort. If you're a high school, you might have, your Year 9 design and technology class. You probably have a team for them, and then you'd archive them at the end of every year and create a new one. But we've already prepared one for today, so I'm just going to hit cancel there. I'm going to jump back to my Teams, and we have this 6BP. It's because it's and my last name.
Perfect.
We created this very basic Teams space ready to create assignments for our students.
So on the left-hand side, you'll see there's a general channel in there, which is where we're already sitting. So welcome to 6BP. Every team that gets created has a general channel. So if you haven't used Microsoft Teams a whole lot, or you've only just started to look at it in terms of staff, but students, it's exactly the same. So a class team gets that general channel. You do have a little bit more control over who and when people can post into that channel. So you might want to think about some of those settings when you're creating a class team. If you don't want students posting questions and comments and those sorts of things, you can go into the settings and manage some of those sorts of things.
Click on the dots, you go to manage team, and here under settings, this is where it gives you a little bit of control, where you can change those member permissions. At the moment, defaults only to those bottom three, but feel free to edit those permissions over time. You can change the theme. That's how we've got this little icon. To get students into your team, two ways. You could either display go to team code and hit generate, display that in front of the room, then students go in and join a class using that code. Or alternatively, on the three dots, you can say add member and add each student or a teacher, something like that. Yeah, perfect. Add them into your class, ready to send them some work. And there's so many benefits into using assignments to send work out and receive them.
Yeah, absolutely. So even I guess within that channel post section, you can post out content in a stream sort of way. But I think assignments just gives you, it keeps everything contained, makes it a really easy workflow for both the student and the teacher. It just sets up a nice process where content can be sent, content can be received. Whereas if you just send it out through, say, an email, maybe that's always been done in the past, or a link in a chat, it's still only a one-way direction. It goes to the students, but then they've got to figure out how to get it back, whereas Teams gives them the option of how to give it back, which is great.
And the old server days, this is where you would probably drop a file in the collaboration. And that's where everyone would have to make their own copy and move it around, and not accessible for teachers at home. So this is just a great way to send it out. So to begin with, we go to the assignments section. You can do it one of two ways. You can go to assignments here in the panel on the left, or you go to that class, choose assignments, and at the bottom of the page, we're going to hit create. I like the options here of being able to generate an assignment, a quiz, or let's bring up an assignment we made in the past and reuse, which is a good little bit of efficiency there. But we're going to create a blank assignment today. And we're only going to touch briefly on setting an assignment today. We're going to just show you a real basic assignment that you might send out. And in a later video, we'll delve a little bit more deeper into some of the ways you might work with your class. So here in our assignment, it's going to need a title. So we might say reading groups in week 10. You would provide your instructions in this space. But Adam, how do you think we might, what type of things might we want to send out as an assignment? Would we do read-only stuff, or would you do?
Yeah, basically, I guess you get a lot of options, which is great. So we're looking to, I guess, send a document. Send a document, just like we showed with the Word document that the student created, but we want to be able to, I guess, template it a little bit. As a teacher, I want to be able to put maybe a heading in there. I want to have some sections already planned out, and I want every student to get that same content, or I want to be able to easily differentiate and maybe send that to some different groups, as Jared said. We might dive into that later. But within this instructions box here, it's just giving a little bit of description. It might just be something around what you want the task to be. Even within the document itself, that's where the task might be, and add some more information. You can see, because this is the first time we're logging into this assignment, it does give you some prompts. So I think at the beginning it prompted you to have a look at the student view. Now it's telling you you can add images, all sorts of things. So I guess have a little read of some of those prompts. If they do pop up, they can be useful reminders.
Absolutely. Some of the things so the first assignment that we'll show you is if you just wanted to send some content out to your students, and they might write a summary in their book, but you just want to get a digital article out there. Sometimes when it's on the board, you can't see the detail. You want to be able to get it up close on their screens. And so we're going to send out a basic attachment to this. So I'm going to attach a file by clicking here, and I know that I've saved something in a number of locations. You can save it from your team, you can save it from in your OneDrive or things of that nature. So because from a teacher's view, I've got the sync client turned on, I'm just going to upload it from my device, pending that I have the right, I don't think I synced the right space, but anyway, let me just going to cancel that for a moment. I'm actually going to grab it from Teams. And here is our team. So I put some files in here the other day under documents, and I believe I put it here in stage, say 3. And I've got this assignment that I want to send out. So I've got this picture, just like Adam showed in the previous video, snapping a photo of an article as a document. I've got a picture of that same one here, and I'm going to attach that into the assignment, and we'll see that upload.
So I guess once that's added, Jared, that once we send that assignment, every student gets a copy of that particular picture, which is really useful. Yeah,
absolutely. And everyone's going to get the same one. At the moment, that file is something that is just, well, this one is just a picture. Maybe I would send out, again, I'm just going to go to Teams. I'm going to add a second one to this space, same location, 3. I'm going to throw a doc in here as well. Let's say it was an article on rainforests. I'm going to attach that one. Now notice here it says students can't edit. So I'm sending this out as a read only. Everyone's get a copy to read it, and they're going to write about that article in their book for them to use and to work on. And at this point, we're not really asking for anything back from our students. So because of that, I've got no points or anything of this nature. But the matter of the students could just indicate that they're done by hitting turn in at the end.
Yep, absolutely. So that task could be picture, content written in a Word document, and the task is to be completed in their book. And they click return to let the teacher know that they've finished it. So a nice little workflow there. But I guess taking one more step, Jared, if we did want every student to be able to edit a document and then return it all within this assignments flow, so it doesn't involve any of that, I guess, resaving it to OneDrive, sharing and those sorts of things, using some of these assignment features, how do we modify that students can't edit that particular document?
Well, let's say, let me send this one out that says students can't edit. I'm going to assign that. We'll have a look at it from the student's view. I think that might help. And I'm going to set, while we're here, let me set a second assignment for one that we do want students to send back. Maybe I've put the task on the board and I just want them to send something back to me. So I'm going to create another assignment. This one might have been again, I'm just going to call it writing week 10. I always like to give myself as much info using the prompt on the board. Please write entertaining text.
Perfect.
And I want everyone to do it in a Word doc. So I'm going to attach a document to this. I'm going to go, I want it done as a new Word doc. What's that file going to be called? I want everyone to call it writing in week 10. I'm going to say done. At the moment, it says students can't edit, but exactly what Adam was alluding to before. I click on these 3 dots and I change this so every student gets their own copy.
Perfect.
So this way, a student would open theirs up. And you get an individual bit of work back from everyone. I'm going to give that a 50 points, whatever my marking scale is. We won't go into rubrics or any of these other details for now. Set your submit date and hit assign. And Adam, do you want to show us what it looks like from a student point of view?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm going to jump over to, is it this one? This is our student view.
Screen. Perfect. So we did jump in and we went from our landing page, from our student portal. Let's go back here. And we jumped in through our Office 365. Then we went into here. You can see down the left-hand side, I can jump into Microsoft Teams from here. So I can click on that. You can also download the app, but again, depending on how much the devices are shared, you might choose to use the app or you might choose to use the web interface. So this is logged in as a student. Once it loads up,
this is what they will see.
This is exactly
when you send work.
Yeah,
I really like the idea of this, like the pre-planning, and then you can also use this feature to do accommodating work. Like you'd send different work to different students. That is an option in this space too, while we wait for it to load up.
So a good old think about it. I guess the other really good feature is, like I said, see assignments as just like a storage location. It's helping you organize tasks. It's helping you organize the content that gets returned by students.
Yeah, and we'll have a look at the return content shortly. So this first one, this reading groups in week 10, when Adam jumps in there, you can see that they've been asked to do the work, and this was to be done in their book, so they can look at the picture.
So this task is, I've just clicked on the image and you'll notice it's loaded up within Microsoft Teams itself. So it hasn't popped into another window. They haven't had to launch anything else. It all sits within the same task. So they could read through that. Again, wouldn't need to open anything up, which is fine. I can read that text, go in there. I can then open up this Word document. Now remember, I guess, Jared, this was the one that we set as a read only.
Yep.
So even though I click on here, I can't click anything. I can highlight some text, but it's not coming up with any edit options, I guess. I can also open it up in the desktop app. That's not going to change my editing ability though. Still going to maintain the fact that it's a read only for this particular one. I could then make a copy of it if I was a student, if I wanted to, but I guess the default setting here is you don't want this template per se, or the content made by the teacher to be edited for all the students. So it's just
a stimulus that you wanted sent out. So let's say that the student completed that task and they've done it in their book, and you will mark that through a separate process. But so you can have that acknowledged here in your Teams, if they simply turn it in at this point, you get a cool little graphic, which I kind of like.
Lovely. So that's turned in. Teacher gets a notification, or teacher gets recognised. So if we go pop back into here, go into assignments.
Teacher view again.
Yep. Did click back.
You're going to go, let's click on the assignment itself.
Returned. Here we go. So it'll take maybe a second to come in. Or if we go to upcoming, that was the week 10 reading groups. Was that the right one?
Here we go. We have just the one student.
Yeah, got it, and it's turned in, which is great. So it does take me in. There's nothing attached because that was the way we designed this task. Really simple, pushing out content, nothing to come back from the teacher, from the student, sorry, which is great. Some nice little additions. I guess Microsoft loves a good update, don't they, Jared?
They do.
Constantly adding more information. You can enter some feedback here, which is great. You can type some content. You can upload you might have a Word document or in PowerPoint rubric that you've entered content on. It might be a snapshot of something that you physically marked from their book, and that might go back into them in terms of feedback. There's lots of options there. And they're now adding this nice little idea of adding a little bit of video feedback. We can always, I guess, speak our feedback a lot faster than we can write it. So a nice little feature there.
It's kind of a little more engaging too. I feel like a student might actually watch the video of me talking to them rather than just read the little bit of red text we scribble at the bottom of the page. But let's have a look at the assignment, the other assignment that we sent out to the students that says, we want you to submit something digitally.
Perfect. So down to our writing task. So I guess the homework was done.
Yeah.
Let's jump into writing and we'll look at the difference here. So this was the week 10 writing task. We click on that.
And this is where every time now that this student, who's just called student 968, test account, they've just been given a blank Word doc where we'd like them to do, to complete some writing. So I'm just going to add some random text, complete some writing for this task, however it is that they've done it. And this is the work that we'd want to submit back. So as soon as they've finished doing the work, they'll need to close their document.
Perfect. And you'll see, I guess, at the top, as Jared was typing, you might have noticed up here that it was continuously saving, and it's saving straight back into that space. So they don't need to worry about naming, where it's being saved. I guess all those little bits and pieces that we used to have to kind of figure out. It's all sorted because we've pushed it out as an assignment, which is great.
100%.
So work's done. I'm happy with that. We'll click on close. That's saved, which is great.
If you had, and at this point, it's probably worth adding, if there was something else you wanted to submit as assignment, notice there's an attach or a new there. You can attach something else. If you had a photo or something, maybe you've snapped a photo of your work in your book and you want to send that to the teacher, whatever it is, you can do multiple attachments before hitting turn in.
Perfect. So edited that document or potentially added some more content.
Yep.
Same as before, clicking turn in. Got another nice little graphic there, which is fantastic. So then heading back to the teacher interface, back into our Microsoft Teams app. That's great. We'll go back into our writing task was this time.
Yep.
And we'll see that one's been turned in, which is great.
And if we can click on that.
Now, I guess the big difference with this one is because we set a task for them, we gave them their own version of this Word document, we can now see the work that they've completed. And also, when we have other students in our class, these little arrows up here, you'll see previous student and next student. So this writing week 10 is all logged under this student's account, and I can view it as their work.
Yeah.
And then I simply click the next arrow, go to the next student's work. Click the next arrow, goes to the next student's work.
Yeah.
Really great flow for me as the teacher to be able to move through all of those students' works, as opposed to previously that I've had, you got a folder,
yes,
all the students' Word documents in excellent, nice stored location, excellent, easy to do, but double click, open that Word document, make any edits, read through it, close that document, open up the next document, and then so on and so forth. So speeding up those workflows.
And also by digitizing this process is a good, I used to take my, you have a tote tray full of books, open to the right page, slides around the boot of your car. This kind of removes that pain point if you submit the task digitally like this, and you do it in your lunch hour or whatever, like having it follow you around where you can work on it at any time. Super, super helpful and a very efficient workflow when working with our students.
Perfect. The other option, Jared, is grabbing some links to documents that's living in our OneDrive. So we might look at maybe something we touched on in the previous video is looking at sharing documents with links. Yep. We might dive a little bit deeper into having a look at what that looks like from a teacher or student perspective. So when you do click on share, I guess we want to make sure we're sharing the right way at the right time with the right people.
Yeah,
probably really important to have a look at that. So I guess that finishes off our little section on assignments for now. There is a little bit more we can dive into, and we might look at
that probably touch that in a later video.
But let's have a look at some permissioning around sharing. So let's shrink that one down, and let's get rid of all those things. All right, let's bring this one back up. So we're going to jump into our OneDrive here, and again, I guess we're back from the perspective of a teacher, but could potentially be students as well.
Yep.
So looking at documents in here, we've got our Lego activity. So I could open up that document and use the share button. Actually, why don't we show that as well? We'll show both perspectives. So I can open up that document because it's shared in the cloud, because it's stored in the cloud, could be OneDrive or Microsoft Teams. I've got my share button in the top right-hand corner. So I can go in and click share from there. And I think we showed that method last time.
Yeah, we showed it briefly.
The other way actually to do that is just to right-click on that particular document there. And you also get a share option here. It's really nice that it kind of has that same little OneDrive cloud icon as well. So we can head in there and click share. Same sharing window comes up, whether we click it in the document or through the desktop interface, which is nice, so very familiar. I can choose who I'm sharing this with because it's stored in my OneDrive. Remember, OneDrive one user, I've got to choose to share it with someone. Yeah. So I could type in someone's name here.
This is a direct link directly to that person.
Absolutely.
We're already teaching a 9068.
You can share it with student.9068.
Yeah, let's share it
directly with student.
With them.
Not something you probably do very often, but that'll be our example for today. With those sorts of things. It'll also, I guess, if you're sharing with staff, it'll come up with, it'll be pretty smart about knowing who to share it with. Your colleagues will probably be some of the people it turns up with first. So I've typed that name in, and this little eye on the right-hand side, if I hover over it, not always super obvious, but if I hover over it, it's a can view only. So I'm sharing this document with someone so they can just view it. It means they can't edit anything, which is perfectly fine. I might choose to click on that, and I can actually change some of those settings. So I can give them full edit access, just as if they were the owner of the document themselves. They can go and make any changes that they want. I can make it a review sort of document. So it might be something that I've created and I'm sending it to maybe a supervisor. or a colleague, and I want them to actually just add some comments to that content. I don't want them to be able to make full edits. I want them to make suggestions for edits, and then I can choose whether I take on those things or not. Not a bad way of sharing for students to share content with teachers as well for suggested edits. That might be something you do more in a high school kind of setting if you are looking for that high level editing, or peer-to-peer editing as well.
One thing to note here when we are typing in a student's name, is there anything that we should be take a bit of extra care on when we do send out a file? Now, I've seen a few things come my way that have accidentally been shared out. What are some things that we need to be considerate of here when we add a direct link to someone? Yeah,
I guess, well, choosing how you're sharing. And I guess it's a choice to check. I'll just click that 1,000 times, apologies. I guess you need to choose whether you're giving edit, review, or view access is a really important aspect. And that's, I guess, adding direct access. When you're adding one person, if there are 10 people that I want to share that with, and maybe all those people are in my school, do I need to sit and type in all of their names? Maybe there's a better way to share it. Maybe there's a better workflow. And that's what we're looking at down the bottom, or just underneath.
Well, one thing to consider up there in that, there's also things in the department called AD groups or active directory groups. And I have seen a few things. Someone may have accidentally sent it out to an AD group. So just being aware of who you've typed in there. If for us, if we typed in IT, any one of these groups here that we see pop up would be a group here in our information technology directorate. So by hitting that, that would be then distributed to a group. So just be mindful that you know exactly the email address of the person you're typing in is pretty safe. And what we're talking about is quite a rare situation, but yeah, just be mindful. Anything with an @ in front of it is probably going to end up being an AD group and sent to lots of different
people. And I guess schools have those groups as well. So being aware, if you do type in a whole school name and you share it with all staff, you know, does it need to be shared with all those staff? And if it's all staff at your school, there's probably another way to do that. And if it's all staff of another school, there might be another way to do that as well. So we'll dive into that. I guess what we're looking at is something that's a personal document in your OneDrive you're sharing with 1 or 2 people for a particular purpose. It's not living in that shared space. Further down, you can push it out as an email through Outlook, which is great. And then you can send that off, which is excellent. Further down, you can just get a link. So this way we can grab a link to a document like we did previously. We can send it an email. We can send it in a Microsoft Teams chat and those sorts of things. We can click here on the anyone with the link. So a couple of different options and things to be aware of. This one here is anyone with the link. So that means you don't require any sign-in for anyone to access this document. So people outside of Department of Education can access this document with that box ticked. The second one down is a little bit more limiting. So that means they must be someone who works in Department of Education. So any other teacher, any other staff member who works in Department of Education that can sign in, they will be able to gain access.
They would have had to sign in on their device before that link will grant them access.
Absolutely. Moving on further down, we're getting to a little bit more restricting. So people with existing access. So I might have already shared this with someone. I'm just reminding them, or I'm just sending it to them again and saying, hey, can you just double check this document? And I'm creating a link just for them, again, just to remind them of where it was.
And that's only those people you directly enter their email addresses, as opposed to posting a link somewhere where anyone with that link can open it.
And you'll see down the bottom when it says people with existing links, it will tell you who has access. So there's 2 sharing links already out there. One is for the student one that we just shared, and the teacher 968, which is the person who we are now. Which is there. So that's just popped away. Why is that closed on me? Let's go back to share. Where's share gone? There he is. Just change that icon.
Let's just change on it slightly, but yeah, so you get a bit of an understanding of probably the things to just be wary of. Just note that you're saving it to the right space, and you provided whether it's an edit or a view. Probably whenever I share something, I quite often will end up right-clicking and just changing it from view to edit, and then grabbing a link and pushing it off, because I like to send a link rather than a duplicated file for most instances. It's probably something else to think of I guess we would call it file security, more of an efficiency thing. What about naming conventions? Is there any do's and don'ts about some stuff how you might name a file?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can see some really bad practice here with document 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Yep.
I have no idea what they are. I have to open them up and see where they are. But I guess when we're thinking about naming conventions, we want to be thinking, if it's my personal space and it's my OneDrive, I guess we can name things however we want.
Yep.
That's a personal choice. If you are starting to save things in here, though, if you're looking at saving it, everything in the building affects everyone in the building, you want to have a standardized naming convention so that other people will know what the document is. Think about when you're adding a date or a year to something. Is it only for this year, or is it going to be an ongoing document? Do you want to timestamp it, or do you not want to timestamp it? Putting the relevant information at the beginning of the name, and then having maybe some of that extra content at the back end of the name. I guess it's a real discussion that you have in your school. Yeah. Really important that everyone is naming things in a similar way, so that everyone can access that content.
It's probably some of the probably the less things that I would probably avoid. I'm probably trying to get at is try and avoid in a team space. Don't call a folder your name. I don't think if I opened up my Teams folder, my team space, and there was a folder called Adam. I won't ever think to go in there, but quite often that's where I'd have to find stuff because some important things were saved. It made perfect sense to the person who saved it, but it makes no sense to everybody else. So just be aware of the way that you might name a file or a folder, especially if it needs long-term use. Other things to avoid, if you're naming a team, for example, I'd probably avoid putting a date in a team name. For a class, it makes a lot of sense. 6BP 2023, great name because it's just for this year. However, if it was my whole school, and we see that primary team, 8 Central, there's no date on that. We use the same team every single year, and we just modify and archive things as we need it. But I have seen a lot of schools use a date in that space, and it doesn't translate so well. There's an issue, right, in SharePoint with renaming a team?
Yeah, absolutely. So naming teams and naming channels, I know Microsoft are working on a fix, and I'm sure it'll come eventually. Yeah. But there is sometimes a bit of a disconnect. If you do change the name of a channel or the name of a team, sometimes that SharePoint takes a while for that to come through, and that can get a bit confusing when you're using things like iOS apps and other things accessing that SharePoint. So as Jared just called out, we've got a nice little kind of channel structure down here, nothing referring to a particular date or time. There is a limitation on how many channels you can have in a particular team. So I wouldn't be creating a channel for the Athletics Carnival 2023 and then deleting that channel when it was finished or moving that content on, because you will hit a limit where it will say you're not allowed to make any more channels. Deleted channels actually are included in that maximum limit. So being wise around channel creation and team creation, that's probably not a spur of the moment decision. I think that needs to be discussed. But when you get into your, I guess, file structure, we've had a little look at, say, an early stage 1 that has the files in there. I guess even this top level file structure, when you're thinking about what that will look like across the school, having a think about how are we going to name this so it works for early stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. That's really great. Or thinking about a high school context. I know faculties do operate a little bit differently, but having a similar naming convention across different activities, different courses will help, especially, I guess, executive staff to be able to locate content when needed, and any staff that do need to kind of, shift between faculties, which does happen every now and then.
And we'll actually have a big deep dive into this in our next video when we look at consolidating our workspaces and defining a great structure that works for your class. I think one area in this developing stage that we identified is how do we delete files? I know there's a bit of delete and probably recover. We need to delete. Things need to be deleted, and quite often I've had a few panic schools call me and go, whoops, we just deleted everything. First of all, how should we be deleting things from our team, whether we do it from the sync client or from the team? How do we get it back if we accidentally delete something? The process is quite simple.
Absolutely. So I might click on here. I might grab that keyboard.
Go for it.
So I might be thinking I thought I'd just tick this one forward, but actually what I've ended up doing is actually ticking, maybe I tick this top one, and I accidentally ticked all of them, and I didn't realize, and I go in and I was like, yep, I just want to delete that collaboration meetings. That's an old one. And I click delete, and I go, yep, I'm all good. Didn't notice all the ticks. Maybe I was, in a hurry, just trying to sort those things out. And it's actually sent every single folder. And teachers probably having a, heart palpitation now, seeing all the work, all the content from early stage 1 is fully being deleted. So yes, really bad. Previously, I guess from our T4L perspective, Jared, it would be a logger call with EdConnect. Yeah. Can you name the folders that you deleted? What time did you delete them? And then there was a back and forth. very much in terms of getting that content back. So to find where that kind of content has gone, I guess we called out the connection between Microsoft Teams and SharePoint being the actual storage location at the back. So the storage location at the back is SharePoint. And so to get these files back, we do need to dive into that SharePoint location.
Now, there is a little safety mechanism in here. See, it says 12 items weren't deleted from learning in stage 1. There is sometimes a little safety net. If you try and delete a whole folder from the Teams interface, it will kind of block you. Most of the time when mistakes are made is from the sync client. Yeah. So if I went into this early stage 1, and let's say that I accidentally deleted an entire KLA, I'm going to delete Creative Arts right now, and bang, it's gone. And
you could do them all, couldn't you?
I could do them all very, very easily. And I might even go in here and whoops, I just got rid of science and technology as well. That could be hours and hours and hours worth of work. The best thing is the recovery process is really, really fast. So notice if I click away, hopefully it'll show me the removed in the cloud. There might be a bit of syncing happening in the background now that I've done that. But yeah, see how we've now lost those two items have disappeared. And as Adam explained, the previous process was probably a little bit long. Now it's actually super fast to get that back. To open in SharePoint from this file view, up here on the 3 dots, because it didn't all fit on that one line, there is this one, he says open in SharePoint. And we're going to go and instantly get our files back. So it's going to open a new window. It's going to open in the browser into this view. Now the SharePoint interface looks a little bit like the OneDrive interface, so it's not too bad. There's a whole bunch of things in here that don't make a great deal of sense. The best thing is once we open it from that click view, here's those same folders that we were looking at, and we've got some options down the side here. Probably the only time you'll ever need to come into SharePoint for most people will be to do this process.
Yep.
On the left, you want to go down to the recycle bin, and it's going to show you everything in this space that you may have accidentally deleted over time. And there's a whole bunch of stuff that I deleted just recently, which is all these, because these would have been the folders inside of folders that I hit delete for entire KLAs. So the quickest way to get that back is just simply at the top of the page, click the select all, or you can select individual items you want to recover. And here at the top, it says restore. So I'm going to hit restore. It's going to bring back those 51 items that I just deleted and bring it back into our team. Usually for a small number of things, it's that quick. So I should be able to go back to our team now. Have a look in here. I probably need just to click away from the files. Maybe I'll go to posts, refresh the files tab, and here they come. There's Creative Arts, there's Science and Technology. What used to be a process that could take days has just taken seconds.
Absolutely. And I guess it re-nests all those folders inside folders and files inside folders. It doesn't kind of splatter them all separate. It knows where they live and it puts them back where they were found. I guess, Jared, if we just quickly dive back into that that recycle bin. Just really quickly, if you are looking to,
it was,
we can always reopen from. Go back.
Where did I put that guy?
There he is.
There he is.
So if there was some content there, they're really useful tools, I guess, across the top where the name, you've got the name here. Let me just get us to show what I'm talking about. We've got our name here, and then we've got date deleted or deleted by or created by. So some really nice sorting options. So further down the track, we're going to be imagining schools are either going to be archiving or, which is something we'll touch on soon, or deleting old content. So stuff that's not needed anymore. Things that are needed might accidentally be deleted along with things that aren't needed. So you've got the ability to sort by date yourself, who deleted. So if it comes up to you in a panic and said, I accidentally deleted a few things, you can actually sort it by who deleted it, and you can find just those things that person deleted or who created the actual content as well. So you can track back and use those tools. I guess this will show everything that anyone from the team has deleted. So again, it's the shared space. So it's the shared content that's being deleted and restored. That's
a really good point, actually, because you don't want to then suddenly recover a bunch of stuff that you didn't want anymore because you wanted to delete it. One thing to note here, in the online version of OneDrive, you also have a recycle bin.
Same thing.
Same process. You can restore. There's nothing in there right now. But yeah, anything deleted, come up here, restore it instantly, back and away you go. I think it sits in there for at least 90 days. And then there's a secondary recycle bin that sits a little further away that lasts a little bit longer. Anything outside of that, it may be gone forever, but hopefully you pick up that issue. Now, something else that actually came to light in a conversation we were having the other day was we sometimes get told that, oh, my files have disappeared. They're missing. Something's wrong. There's a glitch in the matrix. Usually 95% of the time, the mystery missing files is probably just user error where someone's accidentally moved the files away from that space. Maybe they're in the sync client and they were moving around thinking it was just for them. So in any file space, see this little eye right at the end? If I click on that, this is where we're going to get a little activity log. What has happened in this channel or in this folder, who has moved what, when, and why, and then you might be able to track back and go, oh, Adam, why did you move that out of the shared space and into your OneDrive? And it's usually just people are just unsure.
I thought that was my OneDrive that I was using.
Yeah.
So a little bit of confusion. Yep.
But you want to find that, you need to scroll down. So it's not obvious. When you open it, you see this panel and go, no, that tells me nothing. Scroll down. And here is all the things that have happened. So there's all these files that we just restored. And this will be a long list of like 50 things. So if I keep going further down, all the stuff like this, I deleted them. Yep. So it becomes quite a big list. But eventually you get to stuff, oh, here's me creating work in here 2 hours ago and things of that nature. Things that might have happened earlier in the week. Some test documents here with that's a great file name there, Adam. Excellent, very well written.
Not good naming convention.
Great naming convention. So yeah, quite often you might go, look, Jared was the one who edited it. I'm going to have a chat to him and let's get it back out of his OneDrive and put it back where it belongs. So there is that tracking mechanism. It probably hasn't gone missing. Maybe it did, but I'd say 95% of the time it's user error. So that is something to consider.
Perfect. I think something else along that line of recovering lost documents or something that's happened to a document that you maybe didn't want to happen to is version history. So version history with cloud-based documents is a real benefit. And I guess that tracks back to something we mentioned in a previous video about starting the work in the cloud. So creating a document in a cloud-based environment from that very creation, very point in time, any work that's done moving forward is all captured separately. So over a period of time, I could revisit a document every half an hour throughout the day. And using version history, I can actually track back to any point in time and restore the document to be like that. So I might have accidentally given edit access to Jared to a document, and I didn't mean to give him edit access, and he's done a whole lot of edits which he thought were excellent, and I thought, no, I want my original document back. No. But it's too late because all the changes have been made. What you've got within Word and either within the browser interface, so the Teams interface is basically the browser interface, or on the desktop interface as well, using desktop Word, you've got that version history. So we click on that version history there that Jared's just clicked on the name of the document, little drop down. Not a lot of history here because this is a blank document. It was just the creation of it. That's all that happened. But you can restore it to an older version. Maybe if I open this desktop version and I click on the file name at the top, I also get the version history. And we should maybe get a longer list. Nope, that's only ever been modified by us. Awesome. We moved it to the cloud. Because we uploaded it into the space for today's task. And I guess that's a good highlighter. So if I do create something on my desktop and I do all my changes, make it change, and then I move it into the cloud, it's only that from when I move it to the cloud, that's when the version history is there, not all of that work that I've done previously. So I guess reinforcing the idea of starting content in a cloud space, taking benefit of that that last modified. It shows you who modified it, when they modified it, and you can revert to an older version. So really useful tool. Very handy, especially, and that's great for when if you store a file, like a student-based file in a collaborative space, someone goes in there and is decided to be misbehave and mess with someone else's work, you'll know exactly who did it, when, and how. And then you can roll that student's work back as well. Absolutely. So a great little thing to keep track of. I guess the next thing in our list of things to improve, to move us from developing into a consolidating space is using private channels. There's a few things that we need to be considered here, consider when using a private channel. Yeah, absolutely. So when we're looking at our channels, I guess you can see we've got a nice channel structure going down the side here. We've also got our faculty drive channel. So if you've gone through the files anywhere in time migration, you'll know about that faculty drive channel with your 8 locations here, which is perfectly fine. But we've decided to add a few more channels to our school. To add a channel, it's 3 dots next to the name of the team, and then you've got add channel. Now, really important, I guess, to know that there are a few different types of channels. So standard channel is the default. That will get added there by default. To change it from a standard channel gives, I guess, the word is there, standard permission. So anyone who's a member of the team can see that channel. There's no change to that. To make that a little bit different, you do have a private channel. There is a third type of channel, which is called a shared channel, which we might dive into a little bit later. But today we'll look at a private channel. One thing to consider when you make a private channel or when you make a standard channel is you can't change them after you've made them. So it's a point in time creation. If I make a standard channel, tomorrow I can't decide, actually, I want that to be private. There's no button or anything that will change that. If I create a private channel, I can't then go, oops, actually, I want it to be a standard channel. That can't be switched after the fact. So really, I guess, think about private channels. Why would we want to create a private channel in a Microsoft team? That's probably a good question. I guess what it does is it allows a little bit more permissioning. So
what's something we might call, where's something you might like for a private channel?
Yeah, so I guess within a school, we have some limitations in terms of the standard folders. So we've got an executive space that is locked down. Not all teachers have access to that. We have an office space.
Yeah.
You might have a school counsellor kind of space.
Oh, yeah,
so something where you want particular people to have access to it and not be open. So I guess the idea is create a private channel, then you choose who sees it. It's not a default, everyone sees it. It's essentially the person who makes it sees it, and then that person chooses who can see it. Which is a really great, I guess, tool to partition some permissioning.
I spelled that right. My spelling's a bit horrible today.
I think there was an extra letter in there.
I think there might have been an extra letter. It doesn't matter. We're only demonstrating. And so, yeah, who you want to add to that channel. You know, you could add me. Whoever creates the channel, obviously, is added to there.
As the owner.
Now, just because you're an owner of the team doesn't automatically add you to as a member or an owner of this private channel. So I might, who could we add to this private space? I think we have another test account.
You can technically add the student, but this is not something you would do, is it?
No, nothing to do with student. I'll leave it for now. It'll still create the private channel. And notice here the school counsellor channel has a little lock symbol next to it. And that denotes that it's private. The good thing about private channels is only those who are members of the private channel will see the private channel. If you're not a member, it just won't come on the list and you are none the wiser that it's there. It's important that you know that when you create a private channel, it gets its own separate SharePoint. So if for whatever reason you create a private channel, say it's school counsellor, and it's only the school counsellor has been given access to it, if that school counsellor leaves, so they leave the department, no one else has the ability to go in there and access that site. It's locked down just for them. So it's a really healthy thing to have at least 2 owners to any space. So you should have at least 2 owners to a team, but any private channel should have at least 2 owners, people that you know they're going to be around a long time. It's probably just good practice. A principal of a school should be owners of everything.
I was going to say, if there's a private channel being added to a school structure like this,
yes,
99.9% of the time, there probably could be maybe one exception out in there in the world, but I'd say 99.9% of the time, the principal must be added as an owner of that private channel as well, just for clarity, for good transparency of a school.
Yeah.
I feel like the principal needs to know and be able to see who is in those channels. A really good tip, I guess, within those private channels, Jared, is we jump into the settings of the private channel, which is the 3 dots up there, and we can actually go in and manage that channel. So if I was added as a member, that's fine. I can also go and actually see who the other members and owners are. So even if I'm just a member and I don't have that ownership access, I can see who the owner is. So really useful to see who's there, and if that person has left or those sorts of things, it gives you a person to contact, I guess, to figure out how to change that kind of setting. So I guess it's a discussion, whole school discussion, I guess, or a talk with the executive of the school. Do you need it to be a private channel? If it's okay for the content to be accessible within all staff of the school or all teaching staff and those who already have permission to that teacher drive, I would just make a standard channel. But there's definitely sometimes those needs.
There could be a reason. Yeah. Now, if you're worried that people are spinning up their own private channels and you don't want them to, as an owner, if you were an owner of a team, you can go in here to the teams, manage team space. And here, we showed this a little bit earlier, under permissions, you can turn off the ability for where does it say? Create and update channels. Allow members to create private channels. Turn that off. It should be maybe the policy of the school should be, if you need a private channel, you need to get permission from an owner to spin up said private channel, just to make sure that the right procedures followed and that there's more than one owner in that space. Otherwise you're locked out from those files, and it could be something important. You know, it could be something even as important as the Easter Hat Parade organisation for that year. Don't make it a private channel. It should be something that everyone can access ongoingly as required.
Absolutely. And I guess there are some benefits, I guess, whether it was a school counsellor channel or whether it was, say, an executive team or an office channel, something around that space, you do get a nice communication piece built within that private channel. So anything that happens in post, so I could kick up a new conversation here, everyone who's in this channel gets to see that communication. You could be sending minute notes within a school office or within an executive. You could be asking questions of each other. I guess it becomes a nice communication space built on top of a file space, and that's all contained within the private channel. So, so all of the messages that are sent are restricted to the membership of the private channel as well. So a nice little efficiency tool to build those little pockets of communication, very much like an email group that we would probably have today. You might have an email group for particular people that you're sending emails to.
Yep.
This is a nice flow of a conversation as opposed to an email, which is a very much a back and forth, not as conversational, I guess.
Yeah, and there's some granular permissions as well that go along with the team space, but we'll dig down to those in the next video about providing different permission levels to different people.
So I guess to finish off, Jared, looking at our structure here, we've got a nice kind of a whole lot of channels added out here. We've built out a bit of a structure. If we dive into something like our early stage 1 channel here into files, we've also built out a nice big file structure here with a few consistencies for key learning areas. You have their own names. If we head down the bottom, we've got a Z archive, which we'll talk about in a minute. So I guess, how do we go about moving something from maybe our existing setup is like this? We've got our faculty drive, we've got our files, and I've just got these 8 places. How do I get from, I guess let's talk about some ideas of how we can get from these 8 storage locations where probably 80% of the content from your school lives in teacher, which is standard, to something that looks a little bit like this, where we can actually see, oh yeah, I can access just the stage 1 content here straight from this channel, and we can have a conversation in that space too. From I've got to get into teacher, find the stage 1 folder, and then just access the files. Yeah,
I guess having this sort of setup here under the faculty drive, there's just one communication for all the areas. So obviously a small school, communication is less of a thing. And a bigger school, it's actually really, really efficient to have different conversations can be searched over time. I guess the thing we're trying to get at is you want to have a look at your current organisation. And our teacher one here is pretty minimal. We've only got 5 or 6 things. I don't think I've seen a good, organised ET4Ls like migrated space ever. They are usually, everything is everywhere. There's folders in here called people's names, things that need to be deleted. Probably the first thing you need to do is, where are things put? If you are asked to create something, like, is there any organization, any rules within your school that if you make something, it needs to go here? And then I guess you need to ask yourself, is it working? Is the current way we're operating in our file space, is it efficient? Is it working? And then I guess you could kind of decide what is working and what's not working. And this is where we're trying to start to formulate a plan. In our next video, we're really going to break down creating a structure quite like what we've created here, and why you might choose different options. But at this point in time, when you're in that developing phase, we really want you to look at what's there currently, what's working, and what's not. Are there any tips really around like designing of like folder depth or anything like that, Adam? What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess we can put out some guidelines, and it always comes down to the individual school. You set it up however works best for you, and definitely I would have a discussion about it. Have a pretty frank discussion as well. Talk about, it's painful when I have to try and get to this document. It's really hard. So I guess voice it, write it down, and then try and come up with some solutions. But I guess a guideline we try to say is 4, maybe 5 files deep. Is a fair bit of clicking to get to something. So I'm already in our faculty drive, so I had to go into faculty drive. Technically, I'm at the top level folder. When I get into teacher, so that's 1 file deep. Then I go into technically 2 folders deep. Then I go into 2022 programs. I'm now another folder deep. I need to get into assessments, and then I'm there. I probably don't want to go any deeper than that. So you can see that trail at the top. So from faculty drive, I've had to go 1, 2, 3, and then I might have maybe some terms sitting in there. And that's about as far as you want to go. If your trail along here of folders being deep just keeps on going, and the words start to get bunched up so much that you can barely see what's sitting in that trail, you probably sit some things too deep. And I know I've done it before in previous schools where I've had content stored for a particular stage, and you literally open 15 folders to get to this week's homework, sort of thing. And it's just that time of opening. Can we shift the current content to the top of our structure, and then have an archiving system that helps us work more efficiently? Maybe
at this point, because we're just analysing what you've got, what's working, what's not, maybe have a list of priorities. Because when we go to create a new structure, we can use some numbering or some different ways of ordering our content. So it's the most important stuff's at the top. The stuff we go to all the time sits at the top of the tree. Just like Adam said, no more than 4 folders deep is a really good Yeah, really good rule of thumb.
Just a guide, yeah.
Yeah, just as a good guide about what needs to happen.
Yep, absolutely. I guess the only other thing I guess we can look at is who's going to be involved in this process. Yeah, I guess we can stop screen sharing now. Who's going to be involved in this process? So do we need to involve, I would definitely involve either the principal or an executive member to be involved in that conversation. You might form a bit of a committee. If you're a bigger school, I'd probably have at least one person from every stage. If you're in high school, you'd probably want a representative from every faculty and just start having a bit of a discussion.
Yeah.
How
Could
do we
even
say,
be a great whole school meeting discussion, like what's working, what's not, where do we need things?
And for a small school, it'd just be a roundtable discussion with everyone there. Just talking about what slows us up when we're trying to access our files. When do things go missing most often? When do we have the most duplication? And what are the things that are kind of cramping up our workflows?
Identifying those pain points. So at this point in this session, if you have any questions, please, I hope you've been throwing them in the chat that can be answered. So please feel free to throw anything there that you'd like a bit of clarification on. But yeah, analysing the structure is a really good, I think it's an important step for creating efficient cloud-based workflows.
Yeah, and I guess starting the discussion, and even the process of doing it, who's going to do it, is a good discussion.
How long do you want to take?
I guarantee no one's putting their hand up for that, but it is it's a job that it's one of those painful jobs that is not fun to do in whatsoever. But when it is done, boy, does it make a difference. I kind of like think of it as, you know, tidying your house, the pantry or the linen cupboard or something. It's always just a mess and no one wants to do it, but then you've kind of got to pull everything out to put it back in its place. And it's a little bit like that with file structures. You've got to pull everything out and go, actually, all this stuff is just really old. And you can actually start to get rid of some of the old stuff. Or another way to look at it is you're building a new pantry. You know, you might have the old pantry, leave it where it is, build a new pantry and just go, that's good, take that, that's good, take that, and leave the old stuff. And then eventually that will become so old that you kind of just slide it out and go from there. Yeah,
what in our structure needs to be kept and what needs to be turned into an archive? What do we put aside for the rainy day? You know, as teachers, we don't like to delete stuff. Maybe I need the 2011 bus timetable from the swimming carnival. Maybe I need that one day. Don't want to delete it, but it's there that I can access if required in an archiving structure. We'll show you what that looks like in the next video. And I guess one thing to think about before you undertake, it's really great to plan this out and make sure everyone's on the same page and consult everyone in your school that this is a good plan, but do you have the time? Do you have the capacity to do it? And that's usually choose the right time to do it. And then hopefully when we do the change, make sure it's communicated really well across the school. And we have some supporting documents that can potentially help us in this space.
Yeah, perfect.
But for now, I think we'll leave it there. As we said at the end of the last video, if you feel like that everyone in your school is on the page with everything we've just shown, that will probably help move you into that consolidating phase of that scope of learning that we outlined.
Perfect.
If there is, just to finish off, if you need any further
extra support,
what's that going to look like? Let me just bring back our presentation.
A couple of different emails that you can reach out to. We've got our school's digital strategy at det.sw.edu. You can send an email to them. Someone will contact you and help you out with whatever your request might be. It might be technical, it might be a workflow. And we've also got our T4L Innovations email there as well. But as Jared said, call out in the chat. There'll be someone posting in the chat as well. You can reach out straight to the chat and say, I'd like some help, you know, looking at some of these things. Or are there any more resources around something that you saw today? You can call those out as well. There are often pre-created great video resources that are already in existence. I know the T4L website is a great location that has some really nice bite-sized videos. I know this has been quite a long session, but there are some nice little bite-sized bits that you can take and apply to your stuff.
Absolutely. So good luck with those steps, and we'll catch you on the next one. Thanks for joining us.